Good morning. Welcome to Empire City Casino, one of our very valued partners and sponsors. So it's nice for us to be able to come back down here and show a little contribution facility. And I think everyone may have a chance to stick around a little bit later. I think the floor is open at 10:02. So if someone sticks around with a little extra cash, you can go play some games. At this moment, I'd like to start off the day with an invocation and bring up Mr. Steve Scott.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, as we gather together here today, let us be thankful for all the blessings that have been bestowed upon us. As we celebrate our centennial of the PGA of America, certainly we can recall many blessings that have come our way this year. For our brothers and sisters in the Met PGA, today let us both bless all of our award winners and do our part to take away the valuable lessons we will learn as to allow them to guide us in our everyday lives. May each and every one gain valuable knowledge and keen insight so that we may continue to develop and grow our leadership and communication skills within our families and throughout our industry. May this game that we love and its teachings continue to nourish and enrich our lives so we may pass these instrumental lessons on to those who we touch on a daily basis. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Steve. In our secretary's report, we'll recap some of the losses of section individuals, family members, etc. But right now, the Metropolitan PGA family, Kelly Clayton, we suffered a great loss with Michael Clayton passing on Saturday. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. And at this moment in time, for our Met family, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Mr. Michael Clayton. Thank you. We'll move into our agenda for the day. And I'd like to welcome a couple of special guests here today. Mr. Global, Mr. Dan Pasternak, our outgoing district director. And we'll be welcoming our own Mr. Tom Henderson into the district director position at the annual meeting in a couple weeks. And right now I'd like to turn it over and introduce Mr. Pete Bevacqua, the CEO of the PGA of America, and Mr. Brian Kroll. We'll have a little fireside chat here and a chance to ask a few questions.
That's all right. Okay. First of all, thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Pete Bevacqua, the CEO of the PGA of America. And just a couple quick things. I've been sent some questions from PGA National that you're prepared to answer, but there may be a time at the end where anyone in the room could ask Pete a question. I think that would be encouraged. But I wanted to give a little background on Mr. Bevacqua. We know him as the leader of the PGA of America and the CEO, but also spent some time with the USGA. He was the director of championships for many years. He provided legal counsel to the USGA. He was with the CAA as the director of their global golf division. And perhaps even more importantly, he's a great family man and one of the Met section's own. Grew up in Bedford, played golf, caddied, worked for Walt Ronan at Bedford Golf and Tennis, and it's nice to have someone as an ambassador for the PGA of America that is truly understanding of what it is we do and what we stand for in the game. So Pete, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I look forward to hearing some answers to some questions here. Thank you.
I guess we'll pass the mic back and forth, but no, it's always great to be in this part of the country. You know, as Brian said, I grew up in nearby Bedford, New York, was born and raised in Bedford. We used to come here in high school and college during the summer to Yonkers Raceway. And you mentioned Walt Ronan. I started caddying at Bedford when I was 10 years old. We didn't belong to Bedford Golf and Tennis, but I told my dad I wanted to start to play golf, and he said the best way to learn the game is to caddy. So he dropped me off at Bedford, and one of the first people I met was Walt. who was there for I think about 30 years, but worked at Bedford as a caddy and as a caddy master and helped out in the golf shop from 10 years old through grammar school, high school, through my summers and when I was at Notre Dame. Even when I went to Georgetown Law School, I came back to Bedford that first summer. And just, I look around this room, Frank Sergiovanni, who was at Bedford Golf and Tennis, I worked for Frank for about 4 or 5 summers and caddied for Frank in the Med Open and a bunch of different events. So it's always great. And then my wife and I, after we left the city, we moved almost about, you could walk to our house from here, about 5 minutes away from here, right on the Bronxville-Yonkers border, and had 2 of our 3 children right there. So, so many friends in this room. I think about Grant Turner, who I just saw. I was at Siwanoy for years, and Carl Alexander and you, Brian. So it always feels like I'm back home when I'm in this part of the country. But now, having lived down in Florida for 4 years, I can't take the cold weather anymore. So I got off the plane last night at Westchester Airport. I'm like, wow, I'm back in New York, and this is it's a little colder than I thought it would be, but certainly great to be here. And as Brian said, I mean, we have some questions, but hopefully this can be as much of a conversation as possible. So anybody throughout anything, just raise your hand or interrupt me or Brian, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or to go into any more level of detail that I possibly can.
By the way, a walk-on for Notre Dame. How about that? I mean, the guy played football for Lou Holtz, so that's another little tidbit that I thought I'd throw out there.
Never got near the field or any game, but I was a fly on the wall for about a half a second. As I like
You didn't have to go that far. Okay, question number 1 here. By all accounts, the Ryder Cup was one of the greatest sporting events ever, not just in golf, but ever. What made it so special? I'll give the first part of the answer. We won.
It's interesting, and you think about the Ryder Cup, and first of all, our championship season, we really had a great championship season, not without difficulties. You think back, we had a wonderful KPMG Women's PGA Championship at Sahalee coming off in our second year, and I'm looking at John. We had such a great first year at Westchester Country Club, and can't thank John enough and what his leadership and really allowing us to kick that event off in style. And to bring that Women's PGA Championship to a place like Westchester Country Club with its history was exactly what we needed to do in year 1. And then to go out onto the West Coast at Sahalee, great weather, great fans, a great champion in Brooke Henderson. So we started off the year well, and then we had a nice KitchenAid Senior PGA Championship at Harbor Shores. And then you think about Baltusrol. And it was such an amazing week at Baltusrol. And as everybody in this room knows, we changed the date of the PGA Championship because of the Olympics. So we played at the end of July. And I had said repeatedly for 3 years, oh, that's going to be a great move. The weather's better at the end of July. There's more people around because if you can go on vacation in August in this part of the country, that's when you go on vacation. And then we had the weather we had. So it certainly ate my words. But it was a great week. Saturday was an unbelievably tough day for major championship golf. The amount of rain we got on that Saturday, I'm looking right here at Dan Pasternak, the conversations that we had. And really, hats off to Kerry Haig. Kerry made some, I think, really brave calls over the course of that 24 hours. And I'll never forget, it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and my phone rang, and it was Kerry, and he's like, hey, listen, you probably have never thought you'd hear this from me, but we have to play lift, clean, and place tomorrow. There's no way around it. And we did. I said, Kerry, if that's your instincts, you've been doing this for 25 years. Nobody runs major championships like you do. Let's do it. And got the approval of the officers. And got to Baltusrol, and I'm sorry, it's a long-winded answer to your question. Got to Baltusrol on Sunday morning, and I went to bed Saturday night. I said, there's probably about a 5% chance we're going to get this done on Sunday. And then I was thinking, we're going to go into Monday, and based on the weather on Monday, we might actually be here on Tuesday. But I got to Baltusrol very early, about 5 o'clock that morning on Sunday, and it just looked like we might catch a break. And with the decisions that our championship team made, led by Kerry, and then just quite frankly, Brian, getting really lucky with the weather, we had this great day of golf on Sunday. I apologize for this cough. A great champion in Jimmy Walker, that heroic effort by Jason Day, and it turned out to be a wonderful championship at one of the great golf courses in this part of the country. And then, fast forward to the Ryder Cup, and everybody knows we went through a whole process about the Ryder Cup with this task force. And we took a lot of jabs, and a lot of people kind of said, well, what's the point of a task force, and isn't everybody just overthinking it? But I remember when we were flying back from Scotland, from Glen Eagles, and I was talking to Ambry a moment ago, and I remember a conversation I had with Ted about the need to do something different, that this has to change, that we need to, over the course of the last 20 years, Team USA was 2-8. What can we do differently? Let's take a fresh look at this. And the argument that we made internally was, okay, if we don't do things differently, and if we keep going down this road, one or both of the following will happen. The event will become less relevant because it needs to be competitive. To go back to Notre Dame football, it needs to be Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a bad example this year, but it needs to be Notre Dame, Michigan. It has to be either team can win. And if we continue to lose, the event would become less relevant, or people would say, okay, the PGA of America has been trusted to run this great event for the game, and they're not running it properly. So hence the birth of the task force. And it was really a way, as we said, to build a Ryder Cup family, to build a program. And every great sports team, every great sports organization is just that. It's a program, whether it's the New York Yankees, Notre Dame football. You could go right down the list. Is how could you learn from your mistakes? How can we make sure we don't recreate the wheel every 2 years? And the thought was to give the players, to give the captains, past, present, and future, emotional ownership of the event. Get them more involved so they didn't just feel as though they were guests of the PGA of America every 2 years. And I would tell you that those 2 task force meetings I was in that were the formal meetings, and then probably 50 to 75 additional calls with different members of the task force, were some of the most really uplifting, motivational meetings I've ever been a part of. To hear the passion from Tiger Woods, from Phil Mickelson, Ricky Fowler, Ray Floyd, Steve Stricker, Lehman, our own representatives on the task force. It was an amazing experience. And for me, when I knew we were onto something was when Tiger was texting and calling Davis Love around the clock 6-8 months in advance and taking that type of ownership of the Ryder Cup. I said, this is a good thing. These people are thinking about the Ryder Cup. They're talking about the Ryder Cup. I think we had a great captain in Davis Love who just really handled the pressure of this being his second time at the helm, having lost in such really dramatic fashion at Medina. And Davis was very, very forthright. He said, he went into Medina unbelievably well prepared. He felt he had every avenue laid out, but what he wasn't prepared for was a huge lead on Saturday night. And he said that caught him by surprise. But then you go to Hazeltine, which is a wonderful club, Chandler Withington, a great head professional there, and the weather was spectacular. The fans, we had 42,000 or so fans on Tuesday, just ratcheted up on Wednesday and Thursday, and by the time Friday, Saturday, and Sunday rolled around, when you take the emotion of the fans, which was 99.9% positive, when you have 250,000 people, we did have a couple of unfortunate incidents that I think we need to do a better job controlling. But great weather, great fans, unbelievable drama, and to get out to that early lead. And of course, we're all thrilled that Team USA won, but the most important thing, I think, for the PGA of America and for the game of golf, it was a great, dramatic Ryder Cup. And I think of those wonderful moments of the match between Phil and Sergio with 19 birdies between the two of them, the match with Patrick Reed and Rory McIlroy. And the Ryder Cup has the uncanny ability to attract an audience that goes beyond golf. And that's why it's such a powerful vehicle for this game. And another really moment that's just etched in my mind is I think back to that Sunday night prior to the Ryder Cup, on the eve of the week of the Ryder Cup started. And I was in the clubhouse at Hazeltine with Julius Mason, who many of you know, who's on staff with me, and Davis Love. And we were taping an interview where Davis was going to announce that Ryan Moore was his final captain's pick that was going to run at halftime of the Sunday night football game. And we're taping the interview, and Davis is there on camera, and Julius and I are just watching him. And Julius and I get a text from Alex Maselli, and all the text said was, Palmer died. And you look at the text and you're like, what does that mean, Palmer died? You know, it just kind of catches you by surprise. And then the reality of it dawns on you that, oh, Arnold Palmer died. And it was one of those moments that I'll always remember. When people say you'll remember where you were, I happened to be at a pretty interesting spot at a pretty interesting moment. And you were immediately hit by the sadness of that golf lost the really the biggest figure in the history of the game. And then your survival instincts go into effect of, okay, well, now what does this mean for this Ryder Cup? And how should we honor Arnold Palmer? How are we going to deal with this over the course of the Ryder Cup? The first decision we made is there's no way we're going to have Davis Love do this interview during halftime of Monday Night Football, because you can't possibly talk about anything in golf right now other than Arnold Palmer. So we talked to NBC, we talked to Mike Tirico, and we all agreed that Mike Tirico would go on air at halftime and talk about Arnold Palmer, and then almost as a news bit, just reference that the final captain's pick was Ryan Moore. And then we huddled as a team and we said, okay, what can we do to make sure that the PGA of America properly uses this moment in time to honor Arnold Palmer? And we said, well, the first thing is, let's not view this as mourning his death, but let's use this week to celebrate his life. And that was really the theme. And whether it was the golf bag that we had out there that his family sent us when he was a captain in 1975, where we put on the first tee, to the really unbelievable job that Darren Clark and Davis Love did to say, this isn't about Team USA, this isn't about Team Europe, this is different than Seve Ballesteros, this is a different type of impact this should have on the Ryder Cup. Anything we should do should not be geared towards Team USA or Team Europe, it should be geared toward golf in the Ryder Cup. So whether it was the bag on the tee, the video we showed Friday morning before the first tee shot, the tribute video we did at the opening ceremony, something I really thought came out well, the Thanks PGA Pro spot that Morgan Freeman voiced over celebrating Palmer. And it was just an added special element to a really special week. And, you know, what we've said internally is we have to, everybody in this room knows, and everybody in this room is probably tired of hearing me say that our overarching strategic mission is to serve the members and to grow the game. But we really have every decision we make tries to be steered by that. And so when you talk about the Ryder Cup, yeah, it's unbelievably good that we won. It was a tremendous success for the organization financially. But how do we use those moments in time where the eyes of the country, the eyes of the golf world, the eyes of the international sports world are on us to talk about the PGA of America, to talk about the role of the PGA professional? How do we use the Women's PGA, the Senior PGA, the PGA Championship, and really particularly the Ryder Cup, because it has a bigger reach than any of those events to talk about the role of the PGA of America professional? And I think we're getting on a good road to that. We can always do better, but I think we can use that platform to talk about what all of you do and how we grow the game. So in that regard, I really think it was a good week for the organization.
Before we move on to another topic, I do think that the passing of Arnold Palmer was an inspiration ultimately, and I give the PGA and the powers that be credit for handling that curveball with grace and actually using it in such a positive way. One other thing about that week, there were other events. There was the Junior Ryder Cup. There was a Pro-Am that got tremendous reviews, that was a surprise addition to the week, and there were other successes before the matches even began. Talk about the success of the week in those terms and perhaps even financially.
Yeah, it was really a great week, and I'm glad you mentioned the Junior Ryder Cup. So much of our efforts in the player development space are focused on junior golf. When you talk about what we're doing with Drive, Chip, and Putt, in partnership with Augusta National and the USGA, and that the Drive, Chip, and Putt doesn't happen without the role of PGA professionals all around this country. Thousands of PGA professionals running those events. When you talk about the impact of PGA Junior League Golf, that really, I think, has the unparalleled ability to bring boys and girls into this game. I'm not going to tell you what PGA Junior League Golf is. Everybody in this room knows what it is. I will tell you that we need to do a better job with PGA Junior League Golf. I think it's at the point right now where it's an unbelievably good idea. We've had great success, but we got to take it to the next level. And we made some changes to the guts of it, to the digital aspect and the sign-up process, and we learned some lessons the hard way. We have to get our act together back at headquarters and make sure that we're now poised to really take that number from 35,000 to 50,000, 100,000 and beyond, because I think PGA Junior League Golf has that power both here in this country and abroad. But I think the power of that Junior Ryder Cup, you know, that brings some of the greatest young players in the world together on, I think, the greatest stage in golf. I mean, I really believe, and I'm 100% biased, of course, but I think there's nothing like the Ryder Cup in golf. I think it has surpassed every other event. And to use the power of that to bring attention to junior golf, and we've started talking about, okay, what can we do to even take it up another level? And I think the ultimate goal, and we're working toward this in 2018 in Paris, is to actually have the kids play at the Ryder Cup course. Maybe we can't do every element of it, every day of it, but to have those final matches on the Ryder Cup course, that's a goal of ours. That's something we're working towards. I think we're going to try to get it done in Paris. I don't know if it will happen. And then we've talked about trying to get it done when we're out at Whistling Straits in 20. Because then you have the power of those 40+ thousand fans that are there on a Tuesday and a Wednesday watching some of the greatest kids in the world play the game. The power that would have, having them talk to the Ryder Cup players and the Ryder Cup captains, I think it can be a really powerful moment for junior golf and a great way to show that the PGA of America is really serious about using our efforts and our resources to bring more kids into the game. Because we all know that, you know, rounds were up in 2015, only slightly, under 1%, but they were up. There's roughly 500,000 more kids in the game as of 2015 than there were just 5 years ago in 2010. But golf has a lot of challenges, a ton of challenges. And we have to do everything we can to make sure that we're bringing more boys into the game, more girls into the game, more women into the game, more diversity into the game, because we have to have the game grow. We all know that. That's good for golf. That's good for the PGA of America and our PGA professionals. And Brian, you asked about the success of the Ryder Cup. We set records with ticket sales. We set records with corporate hospitality. And we absolutely redefined success from a merchandise perspective. The biggest merchandise event in the history of golf prior to that was, somewhat surprisingly, the U.S. Open at Chambers Bay. And the Ryder Cup at Hazeltine far surpassed that. And again, I think it's the power of that Ryder Cup. And one of the things we did for the first time is we sold the actual uniforms. And we had a lot of back and forth about that internally. And we ultimately, you know, we used the New York Yankees as an example. We said, you know, it's a moment of pride for Derek Jeter when people are walking around in his uniform with his number, and it's the same exact uniform that a Derek Jeter can wear. And we think the Ryder Cup players will feel the same way, and they did. And that helped. So, you know, and then in terms of television and our broadcast rights, as you know, Brian, as many people in the room did, we redid the NBC deal a few years ago to extend through 2030. But what's difficult about a Ryder Cup, and really difficult for golf, any golf event, is as powerful as the Ryder Cup is, as exciting as an event it is, television ratings are tough when you go up against college football and the NFL. There's no way around that. And so the television ratings were fine. They weren't extraordinary. I personally was a little bit disappointed in the broadcast ratings. Overall, the way people are consuming sporting events is changing. We have to be smart and get out ahead of that. You can't go through a day over the course of the last 2 weeks without reading a story about how the NFL ratings have declined. I just read an article this morning in the paper that Monday Night Football ratings are down 25% this season. Thursday Night Football ratings are down 18%. The NFL is holding out hope, and Roger Goodell had a quote that he's hopeful that the Dallas Cowboy Philadelphia Eagles game this Sunday night will show that might have been due to other contributing factors, including the presidential election, which is obviously getting a lot of attention. So I would check the box in terms of success in just about every column. The fan behavior is something we have to keep an eye on. And it's a double-edged sword. You want to use the Ryder Cup to bring people into the game that otherwise don't follow golf. And I think what has become a part of the Ryder Cup, Tom, what has become a part of the Ryder Cup where we're not going to go backwards, for better or for worse. If you're here in the USA on a USA golf course, whether it's Hazeltine, Whistling Straits, certainly Bethpage. I mean, I've played Bethpage hundreds of times in my life. We know what the Ryder Cup's going to be like at Bethpage. When a European player misses a putt, hits it in the water, they're going to cheer. And you know what? That's what's going to happen, and we have to be fine with that. Because it's like if you're a New York Giants fan and you're playing the Dallas Cowboys, and the Dallas Cowboys throw an interception, the Giants fans are going to cheer. And the Ryder Cup has become that. And I think the players are okay with that. They're not used to that. But they know that that's part of what makes the Ryder Cup different. And that's what you're going to get, which is good for golf when you have NFL fans and NBA fans and Major League Baseball fans and fans from other sports that come to golf events where you act like you're at a sporting event. You're not going to get that at Augusta. You're not going to get that at the Masters, where you feel like you're kind of a church. But that's part of the Ryder Cup. But what's not appropriate is when individuals in the crowd take it upon themselves to go beyond that and to make comments to players or to spouses or to officials. And that's where we have to have zero tolerance. That's what we have to weed out, because if we cross that line, that's unfortunate for the game. That goes against everything the Ryder Cup stands for. It's going to happen. When you have 250,000 people over the course of 7 days, you're going to have certain people say the wrong thing. And we just have to do a good job and quite frankly, a better job of policing that. So that was disappointing, but only to a degree, because the vast majority of the fans at Hazeltine were fantastic. And then the television ratings, I would say, were average at best.
Well, like you said, I think the consumption of media is entirely different. People are watching these events on computers. They're watching them, following them on their phones. And I assume the PGA of America is very aware of that and out in front and has plans to make the most of those changes in life. Let's talk a little bit about the PGA member and how you folks are promoting us. And I think your relationships with the Golf Channel, with the networks, have all improved. You've done some great work in that regard. I remember we would all watch and notice how the superintendent of a host site was raved about and talked about, and yet the host professional was not mentioned. That seems to be changing. Talk about the relationships you have with Golf Channel and the networks and how you're weaving the PGA professional into those broadcasts.
Well, I think back to when I was going through the interview process and I was asked the question about, having been in golf in one way or another my entire life, what my perception of the PGA of America was as somebody in the industry. And I talked about how some of my best friends in life were PGA of America professionals, how I worked for PGA of America professionals, how I learned the game from PGA of America professionals. But I said in the industry, the word on the street is that the PGA of America as an organization can deliver on its championships and on the Ryder Cup, but that there's a major disconnect between the organization and the membership. And I said that's something we have to be aware of. That's something we have to deal with. And so when I was lucky enough to be hired and we started formulating the strategic plan, that was one of the key elements of it, is what can we do to change that? And it takes time. I've been in this job now just about 4 years, and we're nowhere near where we need to be with that. That's a work in progress that I'll try to do as long as I'm in this role, and it will continue after me, and it will never be solved, but we have to keep chipping away at it. We have to keep showing all of you that hopefully you feel that we wake up every day thinking about what's in your best interest. That's a key priority for the organization that we absolutely always have to be aware of, Brian. But it never goes away. And I was struck when I first got to the PGA of America, because I knew a ton of people that worked there. And I don't necessarily mean this as a criticism, but what I realized right away, and some of you have heard me say this, but it was kind of from a staff level, it was a hybrid entity. On one side, it was a sports business, and it was revolving around primarily the PGA Championship and the Ryder Cup and the deals and the partnerships that are part of that, whether it's Omega, Mercedes, CBS, NBC, Turner, and we had staff dealing with that, and that was rolling along. And then we were a membership-based organization with employment and education and membership and sections. And you might as well have had one half of the staff in LA and one half of the staff here in New York. It was two different organizations. And as we went through the long-term strategic plan, as we went through the SWOT analysis, looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of the organization, we said without doubt our biggest advantage in the golf space is we represent 28,000 people that wake up every day as the tangible connection between this game and just about everybody that plays it. And oh, by the way, we happen to run 2 of the 5 biggest events in the game. If we can combine the power of the 2 of those elements, the PGA of America should without a doubt be the most influential organization in the game of golf. That's the goal. We're not there yet. I'd like to think we're closer than we were 4 years ago, but we're nowhere near there yet. But the staff knows that. The staff knows that we can't be a hybrid organization, that when we're doing a business deal, yeah, it has to focus on the Ryder Cup and the PGA Championship because that's the reality of life. That's why entities are spending the type of money they are because of those events. And now the senior PGA and the women's PGA. But there has to be member benefits. And we're playing catch-up. You know, Mercedes-Benz is a great deal, and it brings revenue to the organization, and it helps our championships. But that's more difficult to explain what's the benefit for PGA members. Omega's the same way, a great partner. Now that's changing. They're helping with the Player of the Year awards. I think a good example of a partnership that helps the membership is National Car Rental. I think a good example is KitchenAid. I've had members tell me that they've benefited those partnerships in one way or another, have helped their lives. So everything we try to do is guided by that. How do we combine as an organization the power of the staff and the power of our championships to serve the members and grow the game? So when we go and speak to Golf Channel, when we speak to NBC, when we speak to CBS or Golf Digest or Golf Magazine or any of the entities that have a voice in the game, that's the drum we're beating. And we're saying you have to celebrate the PGA of America professional. You know, when we go to Baltusrol, you have to talk about Doug Steffen because he is a leader in this area. He is one of the people that is fundamental to the success of Baltusrol. And it was obviously an emotional year for Doug, with this being his last year at Baltusrol. But how do we use, again, the power of those platforms to draw attention to the fact that PGA of America professionals bring this game to life? And, you know, one of the interesting side benefits of doing the deal, the Ryder Cup deal with NBC, which is owned by Comcast, is part of this discussion. Yes, certainly it was around the revenue and the treatment of the Ryder Cup and the Senior PGA Championship. And we put in that agreement that if we were ever to do a major event in women's golf, they would give us 3 hours on Thursday and Friday on the Golf Channel each day and 3 hours on NBC on Saturday and Sunday each day. So we had the championships covered. But most of the negotiation and most of the conversations were how can we use this to elevate the member? And that relationship has gone on for a long time, but the new deal just kicked in this year in 2016. So it's shining the light on the PGA of America member. I think a good example of that was the Centennial campaign and working with Golf Channel to produce those 41 videos about our 41 sections, to run those things PGA Pro ads, which I think have been favorably received. And where we want to go with this, where we haven't utilized this effectively yet, but we will, is we said, okay, Comcast, who owns NBC, for us to get up and to switch on Golf Channel in the morning and to see the PGA of America talking about Get Golf Ready or about PGA Junior League Golf. Or if you're waking up like a lot of us do at 6 o'clock and turning on the Golf Channel, you know, you're preaching to the converted. But how can we dip into the Comcast network of families and start talking about Get Golf Ready, maybe during programming that's traditionally geared toward women, or talking about Drive, Chip, and Putt or PGA Junior League Golf in programming that's traditionally geared toward kids? That's where those relationships, if we develop them effectively and utilize them effectively can really help us with our mission. So that's where we want to head with those, Brian.
I'm going off script again. In fact, I haven't used this thing much. You have some history here with the USGA. I think they've had a challenging year. We've talked about a lot of successes for the PGA of America, but we saw the ruling debacle, so to speak, at Oakmont with Dustin Johnson. There are some new rules that don't validate a single player entering a score for handicap purposes. We could go all the way back to our anchoring scenario, but what are your thoughts on where the USGA is headed, and how is the relationship with the PGA and that organization?
Yeah, I was at the USGA for 11 years. I joined the USGA in 1984. I think I was 12. And I remember it was the U.S. Open at Winged Foot where my dad and I were following Fuzzy Zeller. Greg Norman was up on the 18th hole, the 72nd hole. He made the putt. Zeller thought it was a birdie. It happened that it was a par. He threw it into the playoff on Monday. And it was that great moment where Zeller, with his orange power-built bag, waved the white flag, the white towel, and I joined the USGA that week. And I remember I was 13, and we were driving. My father was a Notre Dame grad and as crazy about Notre Dame football as I was growing up. So we used to drive out in the summer to watch them practice. And we stopped at the USGA Museum one of those summer trips, and I remember my father saying to me outside on the museum steps in Far Hills, "You should work here one day." So I fast forward, I'm a lawyer in New York, and I apply for a job at the USGA as in-house counsel. I get the job, and that started my career at the USGA in 2000. So, one of the most influential people in my life by a mile has been David Fay. Huge fan of David Fay. Didn't always agree with David Fay. But one of the arguments, good-natured arguments we'd have is David would say to me, Pete, whether there's 3 golfers or 30 million golfers, the USGA has to do the same thing. We're the governing body of golf. We're not here to necessarily grow the game. So a very different mission than the PGA of America. So, I think the relationship with the USGA is strong and solid. I think we're doing more together as organizations. I think if you were to look right now, we have an unbelievably strong relationship with the PGA Tour. We have an unbelievably strong relationship with the LPGA, and we have a good relationship with the USGA. And I think what's helped us with our relationship with the USGA is drive, chip, and putt, and working with them in Augusta National. Now, to answer your specific question, this is my personal belief here, not necessarily, although I think if you were to ask the officers of the board, they'd agree with me. I am not a fan of the handicap rule. I think it flies in the face of everything that really we were told golf stands for. And in my opinion, whether I go out on a Thursday afternoon totally by myself and play 18 holes, or I'm playing in the final round of the PGA Championship, as far as the rules are concerned, there's no difference. So I feel that you should be able to absolutely post a score if you play alone. That's my belief. I think the reason the USGA did that is because they are working closely with the R&A on a global handicap. And there are subtle and not so subtle differences between the USGA's handicap system and the R&A's handicap system. And I think there were compromises along the way. And my belief, and this is speculation, is that this was a compromise to bring those two models closer together to make the overall goal of a global handicap more achievable. So then fast forward to Oakmont, and I love Oakmont. I ran the U.S. Open in 2007. I played in the member guest in Oakmont for 9 years in a row with Bill Fallon, who's a member of the USGA's executive committee. Bob Ford, who I played golf with last week with Dan Pasternak, is a good friend and a mentor of mine in so many ways. I was there early in the week but left because I had to come back home. And like many of you, I was glued watching the final round of the U.S. Open. And I just thought that last few hours of the U.S. Open was really tough for golf. I thought it was unfortunate for golf. I thought it was tough for the USGA. I thought it was tough for Oakmont. I thought it was tough for everybody playing in that final round of the U.S. Open. I didn't think it was good for the game. You know, and I don't know. I know the rules of golf because I've been in golf, but I don't know the rules of golf like a lot of people in this room. I don't know the rules of golf on like the back of my hand like Kerry Haig does or Mike Davis does. But in my opinion, Dustin saw it one way, Lee Westwood agreed, and the chairman of the rules committee of the USGA, who was the rules official at the time, agreed. To me, kind of end of story. And I just think that if we're trying to bring more people into the game, and you're a kid, a 16-year-old boy or girl, maybe you're a basketball player or a baseball player, and saying, yeah, I'm going to watch the U.S. Open, and there's Dustin Johnson, who looks like a superhero, hitting the ball 7,000 yards, and all of a sudden, you know, there's a stop in the action, and all of these people in kind of short-sleeved white button-down shirts are getting involved. You kind of have to say to yourself, what's going on? And to me, it was an unfortunate end to one of the great events in sports, the U.S. Open. And, you know, we have to protect the major championships of golf. I think more than ever, the major championships are of the utmost importance, because with the amount of golf that's out there now, with the wraparound schedule and the Olympics and the President's Cup and the FedEx Cup, and there's no break from golf. So I actually think that has benefited the major championships. I think the power and prestige of the Masters, the U.S. Open, the Open, and the PGA Championship has just been elevated by that. And a good U.S. Open is great for golf. And a good U.S. Open is good for the PGA of America, and it's good for the PGA Championship. So I think, you know, I think it was a tough moment for the USGA, and but hopefully, like any tough moment, they and we all can learn something, and hopefully we can avoid that going forward. I would tell you, Brian, that we had a series of conversations led by Kerry and our rules officials of, okay, how would we deal with that situation if it happens at Baltusrol, if it happens at the Ryder Cup, if it happens in any of our events going forward. And golf is difficult in that regard because you have people all around the world with their 65-inch high-definition television sets with super slow motion dissecting every element of it. And you know, you can't do that when you watch an NFL game. You can't call into the NFL and say, you know what, if you look back at that play, I think that was pretty clear evidence that was pass interference. Golf has opened itself up to that, and that's a slippery slope.
One more before we open it up to general Q&A here. Just if you could wrap things up, looking forward to 2017. We have the annual meeting coming here to Manhattan in a couple weeks. Changing of the guard, a new president of the association, a new secretary will be announced. But with all that taking place, what are your thoughts going forward and key initiatives, strategies for the PGA of America in 2017 and beyond?
Yeah, thanks. I would say, you know, and when we talk about it at the board level, when we talk about it with our officers, without a doubt, it's what can we do better in employment and in education. You know, I was speaking to Jonathan Gold, who, you know, is doing all he can to help this section. And there's so much we do well in the employment space with our career consultants, and so much we do well with education, but we're not doing enough in either, and we know that. And how can we improve that? Where can we improve that? In the employment front, how can we continue to be a service that our PGA members use, but how can we have better and more meaningful relationships with employers? On the education front, how can we improve our relationship with our GMU, with our programs around the country? With what should the PGA of America professional, what is the PGA of America professional going to need to know to be successful in the next 10, 20, 25 years? We can't have the PGA of America professional wake up one day and say, I own the corner record store, and nobody's buying records here anymore. So what are the skills, what are the technological advancements that we have to be out ahead of in education, in employment, to really serve the members? Those are, without question, in all of our strategic priorities, the two fundamental priorities. And I think back to, I get reviewed every year just like everybody, and that's what I hear. Okay, yeah, this is great, this is good, this isn't so bad, but whoa, what are we doing here? We haven't done enough. I need to do better pushing this along. And it absolutely was part of the rationale of the chief membership officer. So I'm really excited about that. And when I went to the officers and then ultimately the board to talk about that position, I said, you know, at the 4-year mark here, we need a PGA of America member at an incredibly high level at the staff to have a seat at that table when we make decisions. When we make decisions about everything, but certainly about those key areas. And we need to put employment, education, membership, and section business affairs and section affairs under this PGA of America member, and that PGA of America member has to report directly to me. I said it's the right thing to do operationally. It's the right thing to do in the development and maturation of our organizational chart, and it's the right thing to do psychologically. Now, I'm not saying I agree with this or disagree with this, but you know, I hear things and I see things, and I have PGA of America friends all around the country. And there's absolutely that sense that there's a lack of that viewpoint at the leadership table at the staff. And I've like you've heard me say it a million times now. I've been in golf since I'm 10, but I'm not a PGA of America professional. Darryl Krall's been working for the PGA of America in one form or another for a quarter century, but he's not a PGA of America professional. Rona Amy, tremendously successful and talented as our CFO, not a PGA of America professional. Our general counsel, not a PGA of America professional. Kerry Haig, not a PGA of America professional. Jeff Price, who runs the business side for me, not a PGA of America professional. There's a gap. There's an absence. Let's bring in the right person to have a seat at that table. So certainly when we're talking about employment or education in those areas, but when we're talking about championships, when we're talking about global initiatives, when we're talking about PGA reach, we need that viewpoint at the table. Now, I can sit up here and say, hey, I really feel I can articulate the viewpoint of the PGA of America professional incredibly well. But I'm not a PGA of America professional, and there's a difference there. And so I think this is going to help the organization. I think as we move in that direction to really kill that gap between the organization and the membership that I'm passionate about trying to kill, that isn't killed yet. But this will help move us more in the right direction.
What's the timeline?
That we had a tremendous response to it. I had close to 200 people reach out to me, and then we had close to 20 formal applications come in. We are narrowing the list. My goal is that we will have somebody in place by the end of November.
Questions from the audience? Does anyone have something they'd like to ask me? Nick?
Hey, Pete, how are you? Can you talk a little bit about the internal? We've talked a lot about all the money we're making for the Ryder Cup, and all this stuff is great, but I'd like to know about the nuts and bolts of our education program. Kids that are coming out of school right now that are attaining their Class A at 22 years old. There's more kids, more PGA members, and there's less jobs. And so first thing I'd like to know is there a plan going forward for the education program? Because when I'm 37 years old, when I took the education, we had to travel to Florida, we had to go through these checkpoints. Now, the kids that are working for us now are doing it at off-site areas that are closer to where we're located. There's not as much emphasis on in-the-classroom work. And I'm getting kids that are coming that are applying for jobs that are 22 years old, that are coming out of PGA programs, that are almost Class A's, that are expected to make $100,000 and teach all day. And I think something's broken in the program, that we have a lot of jobs that nobody can get when they come out. Okay? I mean, you look around the room, you've got 200 assistants in an assistants meeting. There's going to be 5 of them who get head pro jobs in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So we're cranking out these PGA members. Their expectations are through the roof, and there's nowhere for them to go. So I'd like to know if the PGA of America, which is what we pay dues to, and you're the boss, has a plan or has an idea of what we're going to try to do.
Yeah, first on the Ryder Cup. Yeah, the Ryder Cup made a lot of money, but I would tell you we need that money. The organization, in my opinion, is not nearly as financially successful as it should be. You know, over the course of a 4-year period, we need that domestic Ryder Cup to fund everything else we do in golf. So, you know, and then it's how do we reinvest that money into those programs. So it was successful, but I would tell you we need it to be successful. We need Whistling Straits Ryder Cup to be successful. We need Bethpage to be successful, or we're in trouble financially. In terms of education and in terms of the programs, a couple of things. First off, when we talk to the directors of those 18 university programs, soon to be with Florida State going away, they are concerned that their number of applicants and where they're charting the number of applicants will be at an historic low. So they are not getting enough kids into those programs. We have just finished a study that we commissioned that was run by Texas A&M that did a deep dive into every single one of the programs. We have those findings back. We had a study tailored individually for each of the programs that the program directors recently received. I want to say it was about 7 to 10 days ago. Had a call with the program directors, and there were some very honest assessments that I, not for public consumption at this point, but what's working, what's not working. What programs are functioning at a high level, what programs are functioning or need to function at a better level, and what's the nature of the curriculum. So we know that we need to do a better job at the PGA of America of developing and to continue to develop those relationships with those programs, and we need to do a better job of arming those students that go through them, and as importantly, the continuing education for PGA of America professionals. What are the skills that PGA of America professionals need? And they're not just as obvious as I think what we've been doing historically. What other skills, what other teachings can we bring to the forefront? And then to your point, how can we use technology to make those easier for somebody like you or people in this room that have full-time jobs to get their hands on? How do you learn lessons from the Khan Institute of how education can go online, how you can benefit from technology to make it more digestible, to make it more user-friendly, and quite frankly, to make it easier for people to get their hands on. The bigger challenge, which unfortunately I don't have a great answer, there aren't 28,000 good jobs in this country. We have 28,000 members roughly, and there aren't 28,000 good jobs. And unless the game grows significantly, there aren't going to be 28,000 good jobs. But that's also in many ways the realization of economics. If there were 2 good jobs, we'd have 5 members. If there were 50,000 good jobs, we'd have 70,000 members. And that's any industry. So what we need to do, and I think what's going to be a tough decision for the PGA of America, but it's absolutely at the forefront of the conversations we're having, is yes, we represent 28,000 people. And in that regard, we have to be concerned, and rightfully so, about each of those people. But if you have 28,000 golf professionals, if you have 28,000 astronauts, if you have 28,000 people selling shoelaces, some are superstars, some are fine, some aren't good. That's the cold reality of any profession. So what can we do as an organization to make sure that the people, the golf professionals in our organization that have that drive, that have those skills, are armed to get the best and most influential jobs in golf? At the club level, as head professionals, as director of golf, as GMs, how can we improve the relationship? And we've had multiple conversations with the CMAA to make sure that when you have search firms out there that have, I think, a bias against PGA of America professionals for GM jobs, how do we combat that? I had a very real life experience of a person I know well, who's a club president, who called me to say, hey, we're thinking of now hiring a GM. We've never had a GM because this is a small club, but a good club. And they have, I think, a superstar there, PGA professional. And I said, well, I think you have the person right there. Have you ever thought about giving him that combined role? And the response back, I think, is telling and something we can't bury our head in the sand about. It was, no, I said GM, not the golf guy. That's out there. We have to combat that. We have to prove to the industry and prove to employers that PGA of America professionals are not just the golf person, because there's that stigma. And some, hey, golf's a great game. We know that. Playing the game, teaching the game is critical to this. But PGA of America professionals have aspirations, many of you, and are trained to have any role in the golf industry, including mine. And I think we need to go on a mission, quite frankly, of banging that drum and educating the industry and the employers and the people making those decisions, whether they're board members or presidents or government representatives or owners or resort operators, to say, hey, here are PGA of America professionals. Here's how they are trained. But we have to, where that falls flat is if we can't back it up with the level of training. So it's a cycle. We have to have the training. We have to have the education. People have to come out of those programs trained. I've had very notable PGA of America professionals from the Met section call me and say, I just had this person show up. He has no idea what he's doing. And that's a problem. So how do we improve that? How do we make sure that your continued education is better and progressive? And if we have that link, which I really believe we can get, and I think we're doing a lot of good things in education, and then we couple that with really a mission on our part to educate the golf industry on what you're getting when you get a PGA of America professional, to me, that's the answer. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's got to be a work in progress, but we're extremely aware that there's a problem. We're extremely aware that there aren't 28,000 good jobs that you would want to have in this country. And when you talk about the game and the challenges the game faces, that it takes time, that people in American society feel and know they have less time than ever, yeah, we have our work cut out for us. And but it's something we're incredibly aware of.
Any other questions?
Many people heard Justin Rose's comments following the Ryder Cup about the golf course setup. Can you give us some insight on how the golf course setup from hole locations and rough length and things like that happens prior to the event during the week?
Well, it's interesting. A couple of things. First off, if you watch the telecast of Hazeltine, of the Ryder Cup, for better or for worse, there's almost zero discussion about the golf course. You could play the Ryder Cup in this room. We watched the PGA Championship at Baltusrol. That's all about the golf course. So when a player is playing the golf course is of fundamental importance for the purposes of your question. When you're playing the Ryder Cup, you're playing me. And you'd beat me, Steve, in a second. But you're playing me. And, yeah, we take it to some of the best golf courses in the country. We set them up, and the condition of them is pristine. But it really, the setup of the golf course, because you're facing your opponent, is far less of a story. So when it becomes a story is when one team feels it favors a particular player or a particular style over another. My answer to Justin would be, so we got it right, Justin. You just proved we got it right. So we should do it that way all the time. I remember when I was at Notre Dame would grow the field when USC was coming to town. Because Lou Holtz know that USC, would look at the 40 times of different players and say, all right, whoa, we got to slow these guys down. So to grow the turf. So it's doing it to a competitive advantage without getting too kind of tricky with it. And you know, with Davis and Darren as captains, I really don't think there was any of that gamesmanship. But we all kind of laughed when we saw that comment. You know, it was interesting. Justin made that comment after his round where we only had one birdie. So it wasn't like he was Sergio and Phil where they had 19 birdies. So I think it was something that was overblown and really didn't have any bearing on it. But, hey, we knew that we had a lot of aggressive players, bombers on Team USA, and I definitely think it worked to their advantage, which is a good thing. And when we're in Paris in 18, they'll do everything within the reason to set the golf course up to favor their players.
Peter, I read that the PGA is going to go with the independent contractor and get it to be, so we can understand it a little bit better. What is happening on that end with our assistant golf professionals that some of them are independent contractors and the caddy situation which was mentioned?
Yeah, it's a complex issue. So what we've done, and everybody has a different viewpoint, and you know we're different than the GCSAA or the CMAA or the NGCOA, in that our 28,000 professionals are coming at this issue from all different angles. We have PGA professionals that are course owners. We have PGA professionals that run resorts. We have PGA professionals that are assistant pros. We have PGA professionals. I mean, I could, you know all those examples. So we don't have one clear-cut answer that we could say, okay, when asked this question, give this answer. Because we've had professionals calling us up looking for a particular point of view. So what we have to do to the extent possible is be objective and give the right information. And we've had a lot of debates about what's the proper way to handle this. And so the 2 steps we've taken so far, to be followed by further steps, is we did a very detailed, I thought, question and answer document that we circulated around and put on PGA.org of likely questions and answers that we had researched by our outside counsel in Washington, D.C. We're also staying close to lobbying groups to get a sense of what's the latest and where's this going. We then did a webinar, I'm going to say 2-3 weeks ago, that we had an unfortunate error with the webinar, that it was supposed to have room for 1,000 people. It only had room for 100 people. But we had the 100 people on it. We had, I believe, 600 or so more go back onto PGA.org and watch it. The open rate about the webinar and the Q&A has been historically high for us. So between the question and answer and the webinar, I think it was a good start. Now what we're going to do as we continue to hear, and we haven't heard a ton in the last couple of weeks, but as we continue to field questions, as we go through the annual meeting, as I do section meetings, Paul Levy's doing a series of section meetings, as we get more feedback, we'll come out with next steps to guide all of you through that process and work with the sections and the section EDs to say, hey, here are some people with expertise in your area that might be able to help you as well. So it's tough because we're such a varied organization with varied people in terms of their viewpoints on this and how they can use it or interpret the law to make sure that it's not detrimental to them. So we're trying to supply as much information as possible without kind of painting anybody into a corner. So we've had the 2 steps, and you'll see a lot more steps from us as we head into December and as we head into the new year and see if this becomes reality, which it looks like it probably is.
We're running out of time, but we'll take one more quick question if anybody has anything they'd like to ask.
You know, it's interesting that when you think Kuchar made the comment, he was 100% kidding, but it got so much attention. But Tiger, to say he took that role of vice captain seriously would be an understatement. He put more time and effort into this Ryder Cup. He put almost as much time as Davis Love. And I think if you were to ask Davis about who really helped you, you know, Tiger, in terms of the stats, in terms of the pairings, in terms of probabilities, he was all over it. We had a pretty sophisticated statistician group and predictive analytics group for the first time, and Tiger and Tom Lehman just devoured that information. So I don't think he was even close to being a captain's pick, but in 2018 it could be a different story.
Pete Bevacqua, thank you so much, CEO of the PGA of America and a product of the Met PGA section. It's great to have you here. I know you've got a very busy schedule, not just this year, but for the rest of today. So thanks for spending some time with us today.
No, thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Pete, thank you for making the time, as well as Paul Levy and the officers, and getting around to the different sections. I do feel that leadership at PGA National is making an effort to reach down to the grassroots level golf professional and make a big difference. And I can testify, he was my partner. We played a little match with Carl Alexander, Charlie, and unfortunately we lost our game, but this guy can play golf, so he gets it, and definitely is in the arena for the golf professional. So thanks, Pete, for coming up and everything that you're doing. Congratulations on a great Ryder Cup. 2019 PGA here at Bethpage and the 24 Ryder Cup. We're going to have a lot of golf, major golf here in our backyard coming up in the near future. I'd like to bring up our current district director, Mr. Dan Pasternak.
Thank you, Heath. It's always great to follow Pete. I feel like the fat kid who's put out in right field who has to bat after Babe Ruth. So it's always a good time. I had to do it last year at the Met. I see Dave Fusco over here watching me cross out all my notes. So if this seems a little bit disjointed, I apologize. But Pete stole all my topics. But by any standard, 2016 has been a great year for the PGA of America. It's also been a great year, or is a great year for District 2, with the PGA Championship at Baltusrol, and then, you know, the annual meeting coming up in 2 weeks. Pete talked a lot about the Ryder Cup. Quite simply, the week at Hazeltine was just remarkable. If you have never gone, you have to put the event on your bucket list. I've been to the World Series. I've been to the Final Four. There really isn't anything like it. It is tremendous, something that you have to do. It really is the preeminent event in golf, but even more than that. So please make every effort to get there. As Pete said, despite the weather, the championship at Baltusrol was tremendous. Baltusrol really distinguished itself as, you know, one of the great venues in the game of golf. It really held up under those conditions. And I'll tell you a little anecdote. You guys had great representation here in the Met with Rob and Brian and Matt and Mark and Ben playing. But I had a great week there myself. My little 9-year-old boy, who's absolutely smitten with the game of golf, had the opportunity to be there every day. 6 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. He met Rory McIlroy, Justin Rose. But he went to the merchandise tent and he bought himself 2 flags. He had a flag that he would let any player sign. And then he had a flag that was only for his, you know, his special guys. So he had Ricky sign it, he had Rory sign it, he had Brooks Koepka, and then he had Brian Gaffney sign his flag. So that was really cool for us as a family. Pete touched on the strategic priorities, our long-term strategic plan, using that as our guide. Just want to highlight a couple of things and go over some things that Pete mentioned in much greater detail. But as he said, he is actively involved and engaged with his team in hiring a new chief membership officer. I think this hire is absolutely critical for us as PGA members to have a PGA member in that C-suite to represent our point of view, but also work with the team to make sure that a PGA professional's perspective is given. I think that that's great, and I think it speaks a lot about Pete to know that he knows what he knows, but he also knows what he doesn't know. And that's a great quality to have that prescience in our leader. And I'm grateful that the decision was made to put a PGA member in the C-suite. Extremely proud of Scott Kimmick. You all know Scott as the longtime executive director of the New Jersey PGA, moving over to become our senior director of employment. I think this is a great hire. I just spent a few days down in Florida at an employment strategy meeting. Scott did a great job, but I'm extremely pleased to see that we are moving in the right direction there. And I think you'll see some significant changes in employment and also in our education. Ryan Cannon was tapped to replace Scott with PGA Reach. I got to know Ryan the last several years as the director of the PGA Championship at Baltusrol, and I can tell you he is a first-class man and an all-star, and he'll really assume that role and I'm sure take our foundation to the next level. Scott Wellington hired as our Senior Director of Business Operations. Scott's a former executive director as well as the tournament director at Bay Hill, and that really should create a nice bridge to the sections, and that really is the goal, to make certain that the National PGA and the sections get closer and closer together. So I view that as a tremendous positive. Pete touched on PGA Junior League. Obviously, it continues to be a home run, but we have some issues internally, and I'm pleased to say that additional resources are being allocated because we simply must get that right. The PGA Junior Championship is undergoing a bit of a change over the next year, where the boys and girls championships will actually be separated, and 2 separate events will be created. This will allow 2 boys and 2 girls from each of the 41 sections to be represented, as well as at-large places, to make for a better championship. With this, the PGA Junior Series, it's been decided to sunset that, and that is essentially because sections are running their own championships, and oftentimes they felt that it was competition for the section themselves to have the PGA of America coming in and mandating a championship be run. So we're very pleased about the direction of the PGA Junior Championship. Pete mentioned the Junior Ryder Cup. Fantastic watching the young men and women along with our Ryder Cup team parade in at the opening ceremonies at Hazeltine. It was terrific. The annual meeting coming up, our centennial annual meeting in 2 weeks, November 8th to 11th. For those of you who have never attended an annual meeting, this is a great opportunity for you to come over and visit and sit in and watch and see your governance at work. I think if you took the time to do it, for those of you who haven't, I think you'll be pretty impressed with the leadership that you have here in the Met, pretty impressed with our leadership in District 2. But I think you'd also be impressed with the scale of it, the scope of it, but also the discussions that take place and how, to a person, I think everybody's there with the best intentions, which is to make certain the PGA of America can be the best it is. Pete touched on the Department of Labor. I know that you had, in the spring, you had an employment attorney here that spoke to you. You can take a look at those frequently asked questions on PGA.org, but you should also, in doubt, if you're in doubt, contact your own employment attorney. That really is the best advice that I could give. Just in closing, obviously a short report following Pete Bevacqua, but let me just say that it has been, without a doubt, my greatest professional honor to represent you and to represent District 2. Even in difficult circumstances, you all treated me and afforded me a level of respect far beyond I could have ever asked for. As I just said, you have great leadership here with Heath stepping down and Brian taking over, and Jeff taking over for Charlie. You're really in great hands. The Philadelphia PGA should certainly not feel bad about being the third best section in the PGA of America. It really is the best that they can aspire to. And as I step down in 2 weeks, I feel really, really great that we have somebody that I admire so greatly in Tom Henderson taking over this post. I know that he'll do an absolutely fantastic job. He's a great golf professional. Obviously, we know he's a golf professional of the year, and I'm really, I'm pleased to be stepping down and turning the post over to you. So good luck, Tom. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the morning.
Dan, thank you for everything that you've done. We haven't always agreed. We've had some great discussions back and forth, but he truly sees things the way the Met section does, even though we don't agree all the time. All right, thank you very much, and welcome, Tommy. You'll be in 2 weeks. You'll be stepping in there, so thank you for your service and stepping in and contributing again. I'd like to bring up our PGA employment consultant, Mr. Jonathan Gold.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to start off by telling you a story about a friend of mine. His name is Dennis. Dennis is one of our very own PGA Hope graduates whom I've met before. But 3 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to really get to know Dennis. Never have I been more inspired and moved, and here's why. Dennis, who was blinded in combat, spent his entire life being right-handed, up until a few months ago when he suffered a fall, which affects his contact with the ground due to a rod that had to be put into his right arm. When I suggested to try this season left-handed, he turns to me with a smile on his face, filled with hope, one in which I will never forget. As I began to instruct Dennis, he told me that it was PGA Hope that was in fact saving his life. The idea of a new and exciting journey ahead was showing through, and he was determined how to play this wonderful game. As we prepared and played for the next 45 minutes, there were moments of greatness. There were some misses, of course, but not once did this incredible veteran, with all the odds stacked against him, ever give up. To those professionals who have volunteered with PGA Hope, first and foremost, thank you. For those who have not, try to make an effort next season. Not for this section, and as hard as this is to say, not for the veterans, but do it for you. The lessons learned in inspirational time with these amazing people is truly life-changing. We hear all the time that golf is struggling, and then what follows is that it's too hard, it is too slow, and it is expensive. When you speak to the 275 graduates of the Met PGA Hope, you will not hear these sentiments. When you go to PGA Hope, most of whom these veterans are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and learning how to play this great game, many of them are missing limbs and have injuries as a result of fighting for our safety and fighting for our freedom. Not once will you hear from these men and women that this game is too hard for me. They find peace in golf and in your relationships with them, ultimately helping them come out of very dark places that no patriot ever deserves to be in. So when someone tries to be negative and puts a microphone on you and tries to lead you off the cliff, we as ambassadors of the game of golf, like the founders 100 years ago, have the opportunity to spin it and use this as a coachable moment. Golf is in a better place now because of you. Using this positive momentum only helps our brand and us and how our PGA professionals are seen by our employers and the general public. Only 8 years ago, golf stopped its forward momentum, and 4 years ago, it finally hit its bottom in the past 15 years. Thanks to your efforts, we are starting to rebound, and the future is bright. So here's a coachable moment that Pete had mentioned before. The past 5 years, we experienced a growth of 500,000 junior golfers. PGA Junior League Golf outcompetes every single youth sport there is right now, and we are the ambassadors of that wonderful program. More women are playing golf now than ever before. And internally, we can ask the section that the section's junior golf tour is larger than ever. I believe we are on the right course, and as you, the PGA member, that is a driving force behind this. You make it very easy to have the conversation with employers on why to hire a PGA professional, and frankly, how PGA professionals enrich the club and the members that you serve. Keeping up with the positive momentum in the industry, the employment arena, especially in this section, is extremely stable. Average professional compensation last year alone increased by 7%, and it increased by 12% within this section. It is common for the majority of professionals to sit down with your employers this time of year. Just know you are not alone. You have this section, the association, and myself behind you, providing you resources that will be of help to you. Please know that the 5 minutes it takes to fill out the compensation survey in front of you or online helps professionals nationally and within this room have that difficult conversation with your employer that leads to levels of compensation that you deserve. It is my obligation to you to fight for your compensation, to fight for your career growth and satisfaction. It is my obligation to you to be futuristic and be prepared for bumps that may come our way in our industry. Internally, with the leadership team and our new senior director, Scott Kimmick, we strive to become proactive, paint a clear picture of what the PGA professional will look like, not just now, but 20 years down the road. As we know and mentioned before, decisions made in Congress have the potential to affect our industry. The proposed wage and hour changes, if pushed through, will affect likely everyone in this room. The association is working with lawmakers to explain the dramatic impact it could have on our billion-dollar industry. In the meantime, please go to pga.org and visit the frequently asked questions, and as mentioned by Dan, the best probably cause of action is to seek a labor attorney if you really believe that's going to affect you and your club. I believe that although that this is an individual game, we as professionals never try to be better than our peers. We help mentor those seeking guidance and work together as one to uplift this wonderful game. I believe the future is very bright for everyone in this room, and it's thanks to you, the PGA professional. Thank you for making your story so easy to tell throughout the year, and a great job to all. Thank you.
Mr. Jonathan Gold is a testament to PGA National actually looking out and hiring the best possible talent. He is an incredible addition to us. He's a Met section through and through. His contributions to the HOPE program, thank you very much for everything that you do. And to everyone in this room, if you do need some help in the employment arena, resumes, interviewing, etc., definitely please contact Jonathan. He's definitely one of the best. So thanks. Let's get into some more business right now. We're going to go into our officers and committee reports, and we're going to start with the secretary's report. Mr. Brian Kroll.
Thanks, Heath. First of all, we want to reach out and let Kelly Clayton know how much we feel for her loss recently of Michael Clayton. In addition to Michael, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for some other family members and friends of the Met PGA who have passed away this past year. John Hines Sr., Ron Jensen, Jules Alexander, Bridget Cowan, mother of Peter Cowan, and Laurel Beata, wife of Tony Beata. And I'm sure there are some that we were not notified of. And for all of them, please, a moment of silence. Thank you. So it is my duty to announce some of the new PGA members that we have here in the section. So I'm going to read through some names. I apologize if I mispronounce anybody. And at the end, we'll have these new members stand. Jacob Bowden, Joseph Bongiorno, Jessica Carafiello, Cody Correa, Anthony Del Dado, Derek Diesel, Joseph Doty, Michael Durkin, Timothy Gaskin, Timothy Gillis, Alexander Goss, Matthew Hurd, Kevin Lisi, Lisa Monaco, Matthew Muller, Robert Roderer, Garrett Rogers, Stephen Sanderson, Patrick Saunders, Eric Seitz, Kent St. Charles, Tanner Stewart, Barry Sunikas, Carla Wasenko, and Ian Wilson. If any of you are with us, please stand up and be recognized. Congratulations. Sorry, little malfunction. Now to some veterans. We're going to go to PGA professionals that are now entering the Quarter Century Club. Vincent Serino, Tony DeStefano Jr., Bobby Farrell, Terrence Hughes, Phil Rusnak, and Glenn Sonnenschein. If any of you are here, please stand up. 25 years as PGA members. Congratulations. Only to be outdone by Edward Sorge, PGA professional entering the half-century club. 50 years as a member. I don't believe he's here, but that's worthy of a round of applause. And also some PGA pros earning special certification. Addison Craig, Andy Crane, Michael Mercadante, and Richard Mueller Jr. So congratulations to those professionals. I'm not sure if any are with us here. And I should say a quick thank you to 3 legends of the Met PGA, and I think Jeff will go into this in a little greater detail during his report, but we pride ourselves here in the Met section on teaching and playing the game and upholding the traditions of the game. We have some of the best golf courses and some of the best professionals in the country. I know I'm biased, but I truly believe that. And this year, 3 true legends of the PGA in our section are retiring. Bobby Hines, John Kennedy, and Mike Ternessa, after incredible, fantastic careers in golf. And I know they will continue to be a force in the world of golf. But a round of applause to those 3 legends. And with that, I will turn the microphone back over to Mr. Wassam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Segue right into the Treasurer's Report. Mr. Stuart Wack.
Thank you, Heath. Just very briefly, the 3 entities of our section are right now in good shape and is forecasted to end up 2016 in good shape as well. This was a year of transition for the section financially and how we do our business. That after a long time, are on board with the PGA of America and their admin program, which will now kind of operate the business of paying our invoices. Some of you have probably already seen the benefit already of the direct deposit in terms of tournaments. But what this is going to do is that this is going to give us some reporting capabilities in a very timely manner that we have not had the ability in the past. I see it really helping the board and our ability to be able to budget for the next year and also forecasting for the years going forward. So the net of this is I think it's a huge benefit for us all, and to kind of keep us on track and help us plan our future. Thanks.
Thanks, Stuart. Now we'll roll over to the Executive Director's report. Mr. Jeffrey Voorhees.
Thank you, Heath. Want to start out by thanking Empire City Casino, a great partner of the Met PGA, for having us here. I know it was a little bit different coming here today and maybe a little challenging, so thank you all for your patience and for making it here today. Also, a big thanks to Pete Bevacqua and Dan Pasternak for being with us today. Really awesome to have you guys here. Great job, Pete. Really appreciate it a lot. A lot of what I'm going to say is probably either been said or will be said in a lot of the reports. So I'll try to be brief in the interest of time. I know that that we got a little bit of a late start, so I'll try to keep it moving here. And I think maybe I might take just a little bit of a different approach on how, and Pete said it about the mission of the staff is to serve the member, number one, and to grow the game. And I think that's no different here in our staff at the section level. Our number one priority is to serve and to represent and to work for all of you. And I think that even more so at the local section level, if you will, I think that the association really is the members. I know that we talk about, at the national level, we talk about some of the big business that we do with championships and Ryder Cups and all of that. But really here at the local level, TaylorMade isn't giving us money to sponsor the Pro Assistance Championship because we put out some banners and we put their logo on the website. They're sponsoring it because of all of you. That's the asset. That's what they're interested in. And maybe that theme will come up as I go through some of these remarks. Clearly, one of the highlights of this past year was our centennial. It was a lot of celebration and excitement. A lot of you probably noticed the nice work that Paul Giordano did at a number of our events with some storyboards and some history for the clubs that had hosted PGA championships in the past. And of course, it culminated at Siwanoy with our section championship. What a great host they were. It was a fantastic tournament. But just that special feel of walking around those grounds, 100 years later since they hosted the inaugural PGA Championship, was really special. And even more so, Grant Turner and the members of Siwanoy wanted to do a little something special. And a lot of you are aware that they put on an invitational pro-am where they brought in some tour players to play with their membership, and they raised $24,000 for the Met PGA Foundation that day. So just an awesome connection to our centennial and to sort of wrap that celebration. Onto our foundation, again, sort of a segue from the funds raised by Siwanoy. We had some changes in our foundation this year. We renamed it to be just the Met PGA Foundation as opposed to just solely focused on junior golf as it had been in the past. And we asked all of you to reevaluate or try to raise your funds differently than you had in the past. And it wasn't easy, but I'm proud to report that not only did we raise $100,000 for the Met PGA Foundation, and that's a mixture of funds that some clubs value junior golf, some clubs value the PGA Hope program, and that's fine. That's great. In addition to that $100,000, we raised $200,000 for Folds of Honor. So, in my view, we maintained the level that we supported the Folds of Honor and Patriot Golf Day, and still were able to hit our $100,000 mark that President Meskel challenged us to years back. And so, what an unbelievable job! And again, that's because of you guys. The staff We get a lot of credit for things that go well, whether it be a tournament, whether it's fundraising. But again, that's the members. That's because of all of you and what you do every day, what you do at your club. A fantastic job supporting all of those foundation initiatives. In addition to Hope and Folds of Honor, those funds go to support the Junior Tour. We have over 100 Junior Tour events in a pretty short window of time. And again, it's not only the funds that you raise to support, but it's hosting them and the extra things that you do when those tournaments come to your club that make it work, that make it happen. PGA Junior League, another foundation initiative. Fantastic job by our Assistants Association, really wrapping their arms around the program at their club in most cases, and also in our section championship that we had at Silvermine with Stuart and his team and the Assistants Association that came out to make the day extra special for the kids. Those that were there know what a fantastic day that was. Our tournament program, another highlight of 2016. We're very proud of our tournaments, and we're lucky to have the sponsors that we have, like Lincoln, MasterCard, Ernst & Young, Lennox Advisors, the Treber Group, Polo Golf, National Car Rental, Omega, TaylorMade. The list goes on. To our partners program, who do the wonderful expo in the fall and allow us to have our Pro where we're able to play for significantly more money than we would have had we not had that expo. Our PGA Championship was a great highlight of 2016, and the five, as Dan mentioned, the 5 members of our association that played over there. It was fantastic. I was lucky to go over and watch, and they all carried themselves so well. They represented all of you well, and I know that you were all back in the golf shop pressing refresh and rooting for them to make the cut, and just a wonderful aspect for our members and a wonderful highlight to 2016. Still to come is the Assistants Championship and the National Seniors Championship, where we have a number of you in this room who will be representing us at those national championships. To education, another fantastic year where we had Butch Harmon this spring. Very well attended, very popular, very entertaining session that we had with Coach Harmon. And of course today with Dr. McCabe, I think a little bit more of an unknown Dr. McCabe than Butch, but I promise that you're going to be inspired and impressed by Dr. McCabe this afternoon. And your dedicated committee members of the Education Committee are meeting today to lay out the winter series that's become ever popular. So stay tuned for that. They're going to hopefully lay out the roundtables that will be coming up in just a few short weeks that we hope are well attended as well. So stay tuned for those things. I know that they also intend to put together a program for some counsel on these Department of Labor issues that have been talked about already today, and that, you know, as has been alluded to, I think by Pete and others, those issues tend to be pretty individualistic. There's no magic wand that we can wave. There's no, even those survey questions, they're very generalized, but I think the idea of your education committee is that, hey, let's try to get a day together where we can have people come and sit down with some professionals and get counsel on their specific, how these things are going to affect your specific operation and your specific business. So again, to that education committee, fantastic job, and look for those things that are coming up. I'm almost done, I promise. On the employment front, again, Jonathan Gold spoke so very well about his efforts and what he's doing, and Jonathan and I have been working pretty well together, and with Charlie, of course, on some of the things that have been happening. As Brian mentioned, we have 3 legends retiring, Mr. Kennedy, Bobby Hines, and Mike Ternessa retiring this year. Really pleased to announce, I know it's probably not much of a secret, Nick Maselli will be taking over for Bobby at Old Oaks, or already has taken over, I guess, Nicky. That Ben Hoffine has been identified as the new director of golf at Westchester Country Club. And at Rockville Links, they are, I think, down to a few finalists, and they have a few more things to get through, but they're progressing very nicely there as well. So really nice to see some of our own getting these great jobs and the great job that they've done. and certainly a little bit of a domino effect as some things are going to be opening up behind them. So thanks to Jonathan and thanks to Charlie for continuing to help us all in that arena. And as Jonathan said, you know, again, to that every member, the association is every member. The compensation survey is a really easy way that you can help be an important facet of the association. You know, not everybody has time to serve on the board. Not everybody has time to attend every education event or play in a tournament. But gosh, I really hope you have time to fill out a compensation survey. And you'd be surprised at the low level of response that we get. So, Jonathan, great point, and I would urge everybody to help us out by doing the same. As Stuart mentioned, this was a great transitional year for this association. You know, Charlie stepping aside, it was almost certain that there were going to be some things missed, that we obviously lost a great leader. In addition to that, with Tony Morell retiring from doing our accounting, we had the opportunity to go to Pete and his team at PGA headquarters and jump on their admin program. It's been a little bumpy, but as Stuart said, I see such a great value in the future going forward. Our ability to be consistent from year to year, our ability to forecast, and our ability to budget, which we have been historically not very good at, are very promising. So please bear with us, and I guess that's my thank you for bearing with us over this past year. The members have been fantastic in sort of your patience with us throughout this past year, and the staff as well. You know, a number of the members of the staff saw a change in their role this year, which was difficult for those individuals. Even for the ones who stayed in their existing position, just based on all the changes, it was a tough year for everybody. And I can't say enough about Kelly, Dan, Paul, Kevin, Caitlin, the field staff, Frank, Tommy, John, Don, all the interns. What a job they did. Anything that made us or me look good is because of the work that they did. Again, thank you to the members for your patience. And I can't say enough about the staff. They're all in the back, and you all know who they are. But we get far too much credit when things go well, and certainly I do. So thanks to all of them. Just to wrap up, a couple more thoughts here. Dan Pasternak mentioned the annual meeting. I didn't know what the annual meeting really was until I attended one. Didn't know what it was all about. Didn't really have a clue. Years back, Charlie brought me along, and Dan hit the nail on the head. Until you've been to an annual meeting, or let me try a different way. Your perception of the association will absolutely change after you've attended an annual meeting. I know that there's apathy out there. I know that there's, what does the association do for me? When you see the process, when you see what the leadership does and the amount of time and the amount of thought and energy that goes into an annual meeting, I think you'll be inspired. I think that you'll feel more confident in the greater being of the association. I think you'll feel more a part of the greater being, if you will. It's right down the road. It's right here. You know, if you're not, talk about apathy. If you don't make it to this one, I don't know if you're going to make it at all. But again, that's my soapbox there for that, and I can't encourage you more strongly to take, even if it's a half a day, just to see what it's all about and to see the production. It's meaningful, and I know it'll be inspirational. With our sponsors, that's another area, again, like the compensation survey, as I said about the association being each and every one of you, maybe no more important area than sponsorship. Know who our sponsors are. When you attend the merchandise show, make a list of a half a dozen of them who you don't do business with, and take 10 minutes, do a drive-by, say, hey, I know you're a Met Sections partner, sponsor, thank you. Maybe it spins into another extra 10-minute conversation, and sure, they're going to want to try to sell you something, but if you can afford an extra hour, saying thank you to 6 partners, you have no idea the impact that that has. And I know there's a lot of people out there that say, well, I'm not Heath Wassam or Stuart Wyack or Michael Shank, and they don't care about seeing me. They do. Believe me, they do. It will only make us all better. It's the power of many versus the power of few. So please, remember to stop by and see those folks at the show, even to the expo. It's amazing to me the complaints that I receive at the expo when we're all there together, and the partners and sponsors still feel underappreciated, or that they haven't had enough face time with you. Because again, you are what they want. Banners are nice, logos are great, but you are what they want. So